Good morning, everybody. Woo! Who's happy to be alive? The left side is. What's wrong with the right side? Let's try it again. Who's happy to be alive? Okay. I know you got classes and stuff, but you can have some energy. It's awesome to be back here. Thank you, Cornerstone, for being who you are. Thank you for this morning, the students who arrived this morning for our early morning breakfast and our conversation about abortion and rape. You know, really easy thing to talk about. But I love the fact that students here are being taught to think, not to fear. And as Christians, we can't fear engaging in all these cultural shifting issues because we are the ones who know the truth, who can speak life and hope into all kinds of situations. Today I'm talking about life, love, and legacy. I am the chief creative agitator of the Radiance Foundation, or chief creative officer, whichever. And I love talking about these issues. I love designing stuff that's fearless, factual, and freeing. My wife, Bethany, who's here in the front row. Can you all just say hi, Bethany? Love of my life. I love calling you out. It's a little embarrassing. She is also the co-founder of the Radiance Foundation, and we love addressing these issues. We're motivated by 1 Corinthians 13:6, which says, love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. This is why we do what we do. People want to shut us up, and they have tried to shut us up, but we create content to help equip Christians especially, but the public at large, to understand issues. We're factivists, so we love presenting context so that you have clarity about what's going on in the world around us. You can see some of these things. If you go to radiance.life/graphics, you'll see a lot of the graphics. There are videos, a lot of op-eds with extensive research. These are some of the presentations. We have been blessed to be able to be on a lot of news media, Fox News, ABC, CNN, all across the online news outlets. Sometimes we're loved, sometimes not so much. In fact, I think the last time I talked here was about, so what if you're hated? Get over the fact that people are going to hate you because you're a Christian. Doesn't matter how nicely you say something, you're still going to be hated, and we don't speak the truth in love in order to be loved back, but we speak the truth in love because we want people to be set free. And so we have a lot of content. In fact, there's a table somewhere. I'm kind of lost where that table might be, but wherever the lobby is, there are some of our free books. We actually just have a bunch of free books while they last, so grab them. Pro-life kids, he is he, she is she, which is crazy. We have to say this in 2025, but we have to say it. And not equal, civil rights gone wrong. And so some of those books, there are a bunch of free ones out there for you. And so please grab those. Another part of our organization is our adoption focus. We have this Adopted and Loved Fund where we fund Christian families who seek to adopt vulnerable children. We've been able to be blessed enough to have the ability to give sizable grants to Christian families seeking to adopt. And we cannot wait for God to continue to open up those floodgates. Also, we are really stoked about one of your own. Amelia Verizman, can you just stand up for a second? Just to, if you don't know, Amelia is amazing. She heard me speak years ago and wanted to, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but she wanted to be involved. She has interned with us and been part-time with us, designing awesome stuff. In fact, you go to the table, there's a bunch of her design stuff, some of the stickers, and the hoodie that she's wearing, which says some of the best things in life are unplanned. We actually are going to give away two of those at the table. But we're so thankful that Cornerstone has poured into her, so then she can pour into our organizations. We pour into others all around the world. And so it's a massive blessing to be able to have worked with and continue to work with Amelia. So there you go. I embarrassed you enough. That's enough. But today's message is about life, love, and legacy. And when it comes to this, without life, there is no inheritance. Without life, there is no legacy. There's nothing at all. We're all image bearers of God, all of us, regardless of how we came to be. Did anybody in here control the circumstances of their conception, just by show of hands? I thought you were raising your hand, you're just scratching your nose. Okay. None of us control the circumstances of our conception, but our worth is equal and inherent. And I love this verse in Psalm 127:3. It says, children are a heritage from the Lord. See, the world doesn't see it that way. I thank God that my parents saw us as blessings, but the world sees us as burdens. But see, Satan doesn't want us to be seen as a blessing. He wants to shut down the countless possibilities by destroying us before we're born. And I know a little bit about this. So I want to play you a short ad that YouTube refused to allow us to run. Love YouTube, I guess because truth is a scary thing for big tech, but they wouldn't allow us to run, but it really sums up why I have a particular perspective on all of this for those of you who may not know my backstory. So here's the ad that YouTube wouldn't run.
Some say that I should have been aborted. I am the 1% that's used 100% of the time to justify abortion. You see, my birth mom was a victim of the violence of rape. But I'm so grateful that she didn't make me a victim of the violence of abortion. You know who else is grateful? My two incredible parents who adopted 10 of their 13 children, and my amazing wife and 4 kiddos, 2 of whom were also adopted. Triumph can rise from tragedy. My birth mom's courage proved that to be true. She was stronger than abortion, and her resilience will have beautiful reverberations for generations. My name is Ryan Bomberger. I was conceived in rape, but adopted in love.
Psalm 139 says we're all fearfully and wonderfully made. It doesn't say if you were humanly planned. And so that's why I have a particular perspective on this. I thank God for a birth mom who had no idea the legacy that she was helping to create so many years ago because she chose to be stronger than her circumstances. I'm forever grateful that she gave me the gift of life and the gift of adoption. To many in our society, lives like mine are worthless. Good thing my value doesn't depend on somebody else's opinion of me, that your value doesn't depend on somebody else's opinion of you. Philippians 4:13, for me, there's so many great verses, but I think about how I could live my life allowing it to be defined by violence, or I could live my life knowing that I was designed for victory, that you're designed for victory. Philippians 4:13 says what? I can do some things through Christ. What does it say? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is. So if Satan cannot destroy you in the womb, he will try to steal, kill, and destroy you outside of the womb. And let me tell you, he has never stopped. He tried to kill me through abortion, but he failed. He tried to kill me through severe depression, and he failed. He tried to kill me with bilateral blood clots in my lungs during COVID, my favorite time of life. He failed. And he tried to kill me last year with cancer, and he failed. When I was in the hospital, there's this, this was when I was in the hospital for 8 days with bilateral blood clots. And I read this, about Joseph, and it's amazing how a life experience will help you see and receive something really differently. And it was the story of Joseph. I'm just going to read you just a portion of an article that I wrote as I saw things differently in that. I know it's about jealousy, I know it's about forgiveness, but it was about so much more. So I wrote this: Joseph's brothers never saw his worth, but that his existence was a threat to their own joy and fulfillment. How many take that approach to life, especially the unborn, that interfere with their own, or other situations that interfere with what they think they're meant to do? His brothers originally plotted to kill him, but threw him into a pit and eventually sold him into slavery. The elaborate scheme to erase Joseph from their lives ended with them convincing their grief-stricken father, with a coat of many colors drenched in blood, that without a doubt, Joseph was torn to pieces. His brothers tried to destroy what they could not understand. Despite being horribly treated like property, Joseph treated them with humanity. He saved them from starvation. And they couldn't comprehend their father's love for him, and it drove them to discard the miracle that was actually meant for them. Millions are discarded because so many don't see their divine imprint or the dreams they could have possessed and could have uniquely fulfilled. And my heart weeps for those lost dreamers. I thank God that Satan has failed to erase me and that he's failed to erase you. These words from Joseph in Genesis 50:20 are a new life anthem for me. And it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is being done, the saving of many lives. Part of my legacy is the work that my wife and I do through the Radiance Foundation. I nearly died from those blood clots, but God had different plans. I know that I know that I know that I was meant to be. And I'll continue to fight through whatever circumstances to rescue the ones left to perish in our cultural pits. And so when I think of life, love, and legacy, love is important. Jesus' command in John 13:34, he says, a new command I give to you, love one another, which isn't easy. Who has siblings? You know it's hard to love siblings sometimes. Amelia, I know you have some siblings, but you love them all the time, I know. But it's not easy to love people. And we're not called to love the people who are easy to love. We're called to love the ones that we would love to hate, right? So John 13:34 says, love one another, doesn't end there, as I have loved you. These are the words from Jesus, whose heavenly Father sacrificed all for humankind, giving his only Son, and his earthly Father who sacrificed himself so that Jesus would be loved and protected. God knew that Joseph's purpose was to love and protect and to raise his adopted son, not an official adoption, because in Jewish culture there wasn't official adoption, there wasn't Roman culture, but he was to love and protect that son who would become that couple's and the world's imminent Savior. God knew that I also need a father who would do the same. And of course, before I get to my father, beside every good man is a good woman. Can I get an amen? Well, that was reluctant. Okay. But there are many good women alongside those men, and I just want to talk a moment about my mom. This is my mom. I was 6 years old in this picture, and recently I looked at my adoption papers, and this is crazy. So I was 6 weeks old here, and then I looked at the adoption papers, the preliminary papers, and it said my parents had a year to return me. Apparently had a year-long return policy. I'm glad they didn't refund me. But my mom is so instrumental in my life. She's the reason why I love words. She's the one who encouraged me to read like crazy. She loved Jesus. She went through all kinds of heartache as a child. I may have shared this the last time I was here, but at the age of 5, she was placed in a children's home for an entire year because her parents were separating. Her dad was very emotionally and psychologically abusive because he drank a lot of alcohol. It was just a broken home. So my mom was placed in a children's home. That's where she got the heart for adoption. And then she met the most amazing man that I've ever known, my dad. I think of legacy, and it's amazing when you trace legacy back, right? My dad was a man who loved Jesus. Both my parents loved Jesus. You love Jesus. The natural outflow of that is loving people. My dad was a businessman. They owned a store that's been in our family for about 140 years. Anybody ever been to Lancaster, Pennsylvania? Home of the Amish, and people will sometimes, I travel all the time, people sometimes ask me, well, are you Amish? No, I'm not Amish. I like electronics. I love the Amish. They're great, but I'm not Amish. But my dad's family has owned Bomberger store for a long time. But more importantly than being the owner of a store, my dad was a father to those whose fathers abandoned them. And he loved us all like crazy. In fact, we took this photo, and in our book, He Is He, one of the books out there that you guys can grab for free while they last, but there's a part in the book that says he's a son, he's a brother, he's a father, right here, not a mother. There's also a tribute in the back of the book so that people can understand that good and loving fathers matter. Now, my dad passed away at the height of COVID. Maybe some of you lost a loved one during COVID. That was the roughest time in my life. To lose someone who loved me so much and in such a senseless, ridiculous way. And he died on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which is crazy. He's the most pro-life man I've ever known. I mean, if you adopt 10 kids, you're pretty pro-life. And you don't have to adopt 10 kids, by the way, to be pro-life. I'm not saying that, but no one could ever question my dad, that bumper sticker mantra. But I thank God for my parents who rejected the naysayers, who knew that they were called by God, that they had parents who poured Jesus into them, and the inheritance that they wanted to keep on passing on was passed on to all of us. And so I want to show you this picture because I think of inheritance and I think of legacy. These are actually all the owners of Bomberger store. This is way back. There's an old picture. Can you pick me out in the picture? All the other ones in the picture are all biologically related. It's my great-great-grandfather, my grandfather, and his brother, and my dad holding me, and my brother Todd. 4 generations in this picture. And it's great that a family can pass down certain things, like material wealth, or that's great to pass down. I was, in this picture, it seems to indicate that I'm going to be an heir to Bomberger store. I never became an heir. I don't even get a discount now at the store because I'm not part of the store, but that wasn't part of my story at all. That was never God's plan because much more important was the spiritual inheritance that was passed on from my dad. And so I just want to play you a clip to understand what legacy sounds like, because it wasn't just me. I had 12 siblings. Anybody grow up in a large family? No, I had 6 brothers and 6 sisters, and we had 1.5 bathrooms. Think about that. 1.5 bathrooms. We added on a bathroom later on when our great-grandmother moved into our house. But there is a legacy that is passed on, and I just want you to hear it actually from a number of my siblings. So this was created right after my dad passed away, but I just feel it's important to understand how he impacted not just me, and not just actually the kids in our family, but our entire community. And through us, we get to impact the world. Oh, by the way, this is all of us as of 9 years ago. And since then, there are now 24 more lives added to this picture. Legacy of love.
My name is Henry Bomberger.
The man that I married would give his whole...
Okay, chipmunks are not involved here. Not going to happen. Let's try this again. Not sure what's going on. So, it's not supposed to be a comedy. So let's try this again, hopefully.
My name is Henry Bomberger.
The man that I married would give his whole self.
Okay. Do we have a handheld mic, perhaps, that I can quick use? Because I don't want you to hear. My mom is not a chipmunk. She's actually a human being. So let's try this. Is this testing? Is this on? Okay.
My name is Henry Bomberger.
The man that I married
Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, apparently my mom is a chipmunk. Great. Well, let me do this in spoken form because this matters. My dad could have lived a normal life. And are there any parents in here? Do you pour into your family? Do you sacrifice for your family? Do your kids always appreciate it? We pour into our family. And as Christians, what we're pouring into them, and the most important thing is Christ. And my dad would do that in every way he possibly could. In fact, we had situations in our family where I don't normally share my sibling stories, but really broken situations that would occur, and we would see the way my dad would rush in with love and compassion and mercy and grace. And he would forgive us over and over again. Now, I didn't need a lot of forgiveness because, I was the good child in the family. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Actually, I was the instigator. For any parents who have a strong-willed, bullheaded child in here, I just want to encourage you, hold on for about 15 to 20 years because it gets better at some point. But the reality is my dad poured into all of us so much. It was hard to have a funeral during COVID. I don't know if anybody experienced a funeral during COVID where only a handful of people could be there. And it was so hard for a man who impacted so many people, not just in our business that employs hundreds and hundreds of people, but in our community. But to hear the people who were there, not just my siblings, but to hear the people talk about how my dad changed their life, how he would sit up there and he would never push his faith on anyone, but people were so drawn to him because he was so full of love That you would see employees up there, my dad would take an hour out of the day and just listen to them. And he would help lead them because they were asking for guidance. My dad always had time, and somehow always had time for 13 kids. I mean, I don't know how many of you parents out there raised 13 teenagers, but you know one teenager can kill you, I'm just saying. But my dad's love of Jesus would shine through in all those situations, which is why when I talk about legacy, and let's just review this verse because it's so beautiful. Hebrews 12, 1-2. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. In fact, I need to stop here for just a second because it was Hebrews 11 and 12 that I read over and over again, actually, when I was dealing with severe depression. This is before I was married. And I had this thread of faith. It was like frayed and about ready to snap. And I would read those verses over and over and over again because I wanted so badly to cling to my faith because I knew that it was my way to freedom. And I will tell you, I was delivered all of a sudden after 10 years of battling severe depression. Never have experienced it another day in my life since then. 2001 was my day of liberation. Can you just say, thank you, Jesus? And maybe in your life, you may be going through a certain something, and it may feel like it's been forever. But just keep on holding on and praying for that all of a sudden moment. But let me continue this. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. I want to show you a clip because I felt like this illustrated the whole sin that entangles. Because it says later on, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Okay, so this is what happens when sin gets in your way. I don't know if you've seen this online, but this guy was in the lead for a while.
Pressure. So we're coming up to the last lap. 28 on the clock. He's gonna run under 2. 20. It's gonna be close. 1:31.9. They're off for 2 minutes. But here we go. 180 meters left. It's all down to these boys. There's 5, a group of 5. They're beginning to kick. DCU are coming through. This is it. The last 100 now. 1:46 on the clock. Queens is kicking again. We have Niall Atwood to the front. DCU in second. Paul Peppard. It's neck and neck. Oh my.
Let's go back and just see that Spider-Man-like thing going on. Slow motion. The sin that so easily entangles. Yeah, you try to get off. Okay, but when sin is in that mix, now he ended up coming in third in that race. They ended up letting him go into finals. But see, sin is a little different in our lives. It's not exactly out of nowhere like this was. It's from our hearts. And when we refuse to hold every thought captive, it consumes us. And I know this from my own battle with severe depression. The depression wasn't the sin, but it was my refusal to hold every thought captive. And I allowed Satan a foothold. It so tangled me up that I could barely function. I remember staying in my apartment for days and days. I nearly lost the faith that was poured into me. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says this: we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought, doesn't end there, to make it obey Christ. Satan does not want us to have a legacy. He wants us to be entangled. He wants us to be derailed. Sin is our biggest impediment to fulfilling our purpose and leaving a legacy of faith. Nothing that we can do, nothing that we can share, nothing we can impart could be more important than the one who embodies life and love. Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, who loved us enough to sacrifice himself. And we're obviously coming up on Easter. But he sacrificed himself. Why? So he could just get glory? No, there was intention there. So we can claim victory over sin. He didn't die, and especially in our culture that keeps telling us to tolerate everything. He didn't die so that we would tolerate sin. He died so that we could be set free from it. And this is the incredible legacy. Christ, our greatest legacy. He died and rose again so that we would be free from the sin, that God would be able to redeem us over and over and over and over again because of faithfulness. And because parents poured into me, I could pour into others. In fact, it's the story of the Radiance Foundation. So I'm going to share just a little bit about my amazing wife, Bethany, who is definitely my better half. She's the executive director of the Radiance Foundation, the love of my life. And at that time that I was actually going through severe depression, our lives, we had met. We met at a planning meeting for a pregnancy center concert. I was singing in a group at the time, and I think we were opening up for people like CeCe Winans and Toby Mac and all that. That was way back when, a whole different life. And we met at this planning meeting, and we fell in love at first sight. I mean, anybody here fall in love at first sight? Anybody? Yeah, it's an awesome thing. And hopefully if you're beside the person, they also fell in love with you at first sight. But we fell in love at first sight. But the longer story is it took 6 years. And part of that 6 years was because my journey of depression. But Bethany and I had met at Regent University, but then we went our separate ways. And as my life was spiraling out of control, her life, because of disappointments in her life, she just kind of got numb to the things of the Lord. Was a teacher in Philly, in a middle school, and was in a toxic relationship. Walked away from that relationship only to find out that she was pregnant. And it's amazing, the shame that people attach only to women, typically, but the shame that came over her. And she describes it this way. She went to an ultrasound appointment, and she remembers seeing the ultrasound, which is truth, by the way. That's why the other side doesn't want you to see that. But she saw the beating heart of that child, of that baby girl. And it was like a little piece of rice. And she just remembers God wrapping her heart around her baby's heart, and just thought that if she had to be a single mom the rest of her life, that her daughter would never know shame. But God had a different plan. He brought this great guy into her life. Okay, it was just me. Anyway, no. More importantly, she went home after that ultrasound appointment, went to her journal, and in the margin of that journal, Psalm 34, 4, 5, and 6. Psalm 34, 5, and 6, there we go. And it says, "And I sought the Lord, and he relieved me of all my fears, that those who look to him are radiant. They are never covered with shame." God redeems over and over and over again, which because my parents poured into me, because there was a legacy of faith, because that legacy was Christ's love and his redemption and his restoration, that I was restored. I was healed from depression, and I could actually be the man that I needed to be when we first met, but I wasn't able to be. And it enabled this legacy to continue. And so this is not only the story of my wife's incredible resilience, because she was pressured on all sides to abort. She never considered aborting at all. But the pressure on her as a teacher, people would say, just abort it, just abort it. Well, it had a name. In fact, the reason for the name of our organization. That's my baby girl. She's now a sophomore at Liberty, studying to be a teacher like her mama. Life has purpose, and our purpose is to worship our Creator, to worship God, to love the Lord, and bring others to the saving knowledge of our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Thank you, guys. God bless.